Hey guys, Brian Castro here for Better Chess Training. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to play the opening and how to apply the principles of the opening that I've discussed in previous videos that are fairly well known in chess. And those principles are controlling the center, developing your pieces, and keeping the king safe. That's a very general way to look at things. And the way I'm going to do it here is I'm going to play against the computer just for the opening, just to show you how to do it. And I'm going to try to play moves that I'm not aware of, I guess, or that are not in my opening repertoire, so I can use these principles to try to guide me. Okay, first off, and also to make this a very practical video, because I've been teaching some younger students and I'm seeing some common mistakes, so we're going to see how we can avoid those. So the first one is the most common moves in the opening are to move one of these two pawns first. Okay, and we're going to do an example with white and then an example with black. What we want to do, and the reason why we do that is because it allows these bishops to get out, it opens up this queen, and it helps to control these central squares. Okay, so let's go with e4. I've been playing d4 a lot lately, so I'm a little more familiar. I do play e4 as well, but I'm going to try to play something I don't know. So black plays d6. We're going to talk about these moves, and the most natural move next would be play something like knight to f3. Developing this knight is because f3 is a great square for it, and also we're not sure where we want to put the bishop. Do we want to put the bishop on e2? Do we want to put the bishop on c4 or b5? So we're going to wait on that, and this allows us to move one of the pieces. By moving this knight here, we're going to get closer to castling, which is one of our objectives. Okay, so here our knight or pawn is being attacked. So even though we are just developing right now, we want to make sure that we are also aware of our opponent's threats. Okay, now we do want to protect this pawn. So a couple ways to do that. Bishop to d3 would be a mistake because it blocks the d pawn. Okay, or it could be a mistake. Something like queen to e2, which is not optimal because it blocks this bishop. So that leaves us with a couple moves, which would be d3 or knight to c3. Now, knight to c3 does develop another piece, and I might want to just play d4 in one go. So I'm going to play knight to c3. So you see I've developed two pieces here. I also have some control of the center. Okay, my opponent plays c5, and this controls this d4 square. So I can play d4. Actually, that would be what's called transpose into what's called the Sicilian defense. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to develop this bishop out to c4. And so now it's got, it is kind of pointing in this general direction. It can be very aggressive. Now, I'm not expecting to win against my opponent right now. So my opponent plays a6, and now what he's threatening is something like b5. So a couple ways to deal with this. I can ignore it because I can always retreat my bishop and I can go ahead and castle. But I like my bishop where it is right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play a move called a4. What this does, it prevents him from kicking my bishop out with b5. Now some of you, I've noticed, will play this a4 or h4 early in the game with the idea of developing the rooks. Okay, this is not quite the best way to look at it, because these rooks, as we'll see here, should be developed along the back rank. Okay, and I'll show you why a little bit. Okay, he plays h6. It doesn't necessarily affect, it does prevent me from playing knight to g5, but doesn't affect my own development right now. So I can go ahead and kind of do what I want to do. So I still need to develop this bishop and this queen, and then I need to castle. I can go ahead and castle right now. And now my king is safe away from the center. Okay, my opponent plays d5, or e5, I'm sorry. And what this does is it locks the center, big control over the d4 square. And so the problem, though, is that he also gives me the d5 square. But it does make it more difficult for me to play d4. So right now, I do want to develop this bishop, so I have to decide where to develop it. And a couple ways I can do it. I can develop it here along this diagonal by playing b3, or I can prepare to either play d4 or play d3 right now. If I play d3 right now, this bishop is stuck along this diagonal, but is not a bad diagonal at all. So I think that's okay. And now I'm thinking this bishop can come to this square right here. Okay, so that's my intention. Now, I don't want to play it, well, I could play it right away, but then he can play knight to g5 to attack it. Okay, so a common move that's made here in these types of openings is to play h3. This prevents this knight coming here. Okay, so here he is attacking this bishop. There's a couple things I can do here. Of course, I can capture his bishop, but then what that does is it allows this pawn to come to e6, and then it has control over these squares. Okay, I can retreat it along here, but then he can just capture. This is actually the best place, I think, to put it, to leave it. I'm going to leave this bishop right here, and I'm going to develop my other bishop. The idea is if he attacks this bishop, okay, if he exchanges, I will take with the c pawn, and then I will have nice control over this d5 square. Okay, so it's about, my play here is about developing the pieces, but I'm always mindful of the center and how to develop. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to play bishop to e3 because I'm not worried about this capture here. Okay, moving his queen back. This is the computer. I have it on level 6, which is kind of an intermediate level, but playing an odd move here, which is okay. So as you can see here, my development is pretty solid. The last final steps here would be to develop my queen, but I do have a couple things I want to look out for. This a5 move is something that is attractive to me because it prevents him from advancing this pawn, because if he plays b5, I can actually take en passant, and then this pawn would become very weak. Okay, as opposed to if he were to set up and play b5 with it on a4, and I capture, he can capture back with the a pawn, which if he prepares it can be very, very difficult. The other question is where I should put the queen. Okay, so these are the types of things that you want to think about. My immediate thought here is to put it on d2, because there's always potential to attack along here, maybe with a sacrifice if he puts his king over there. The other idea is that on d2, if he ever gets his knight here on d4, it would not be attacking me. So I'm going to go ahead and develop there, and then we can see what he does. Okay, he's going to play his knight back, and we're pretty much finishing up with the opening phase here, but here he's looking at something like playing f5, so that would be the idea there. Can't do it right away, though, but that would be an idea. What I should be thinking about right now is perhaps developing and preparing for either a d4 push or a b4 push. But now we're getting into the middle game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this right here. But you can see that my pieces are well developed. They're all developed, I guess you could say. I've got some open lines, and even though my opponent does as well, my opponent is a little backward in his development, and in the middle game, in the next phase of the game, which we're not going to cover today, I can enjoy, I think, a small advantage because of my lead in development, as well as some nice control of some of these central squares like d5, and potential ability to prepare some pawn breaks or pawn levers to help open up the position to my advantage. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. We're going to look at it from the black side now and see how we can develop that way. Okay, now we're going to look at things from the black side. And here my opponent's played knight to f3. Again, my opponent is the computer on the intermediate level. And there's a few ways I can respond here. I can go ahead and take space here with d4. I can play knight to f6 to develop this knight. Can't play e5 because it would get taken. Okay, I don't know, there might be some gambit where that gets taken, but I'm going to go ahead and play d4, or I'm sorry, d5, and now he plays g3. Now, whenever you see this, that means this bishop is probably going to come out here, and I know some of you play this bishop out here, which is not, obviously would not be a good move because of this bishop, okay? So I actually think I saw that in one of your games yesterday. So here, I'm going to go ahead and play this knight out, again, following the principle of moving these pieces first so that I can castle. Now, I can't play e5, but I can play e6. But do I want to do that? It is definitely a fine move, but you have to make sure you understand what you're going to do with this bishop. In this case, because this bishop is on this diagonal, I might want to oppose it with this bishop. So what I'm going to do is I am going to play e6 here, so I can develop this bishop here, the dark square bishop. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then I can castle. Okay, now here, this is something that you need to note, is that with this knight developing to c3, he's threatening something like this, okay, which can attack this bishop. So what I'm going to play here is I can play a6 or c6. I'm actually going to play, let's see, how should I do this? I think I'm going to play a6 first, because then I have the option of playing c5 at some point later. You know, I could play this later. Okay, so he plays d4, which is a good move. It controls the center a little bit and protects this square a little, and also puts maybe a prepares an outpost for this knight potentially. Okay, so again, we're still in the opening phase, so we don't want to try to get too aggressive. At some point, I might want to attack his center with c5, but right now I'm just going to go ahead and castle. Okay, here he's attacking this knight, and the potential ideas is to attack here with e4, and then if I take, he takes back with the knight, attacking this piece, which is pinned. So what I'm going to do here is actually play knight b to d7, which protects this knight. It does not relieve the pin, though. Okay, so he does he plays e3 instead, which is fine, and he just wanted to get his bishop outside there. Okay, so in this particular case, there's a couple things we can do. I can go ahead and attack his center with c5, or I can continue my development and play either b6 or even b5 and then develop my bishop that way. But what I'm going to do here is because he played e3, I'm going to play c5 first, kind of take the initiative on my own, and then if he does take back, I can go ahead and take back here. Now, we want to keep this tension here between these pawns. Okay, and I don't want to get too advanced with our discussion, but it would be a little bit of a mistake to play c4. And I know that's a common move that a lot of people would make. It grabs some space, but it kind of takes away this potential here, this tension. Also, the potential for him to take here and then help us to get our pieces to a better position. Okay, so instead, I'm going to grab space myself with b5. Okay, and here the idea is to develop this bishop here, perhaps, and then perhaps develop this rook along the c file, which I can open at some point. Okay, okay, he is attacking my bishop. Now, if I take his bishop, even though it might double one of these, it would double one of these pawns, it would help strengthen the grip here on e5. See how that is? So again, this is something that's a little subtle in terms of knowing when to relieve the tension versus when to apply pressure. My bishop is being attacked though, so I'm going to go ahead and defend it with the queen. So if he wants to capture it, that's fine with me. Okay, he does, and I take back with the queen. And now he brings his rook to the e file, which means he is thinking of playing this move right there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and develop my bishop. What this does is adds another defender and makes it very hard for him to play this move to play this e4 move, because my bishop is also covering that square now. Okay, so again, the opening is always about controlling that center. You can see how all of my moves have been to both get my pieces out and developed, as well as controlling my center. And now you can see I have a very nice game. Let me make one or two more moves, and then we will, because we are entering now the middle game. Again, in this type of position, and we do not want to capture, or I'm sorry, we do not want to advance to c4 necessarily. Now, there might be some opportunity or some reasons to do that in the future, but in this case, we don't need to worry about it. Now, what I'm going to do here instead is I'm going to develop this rook over to the c file. Now, the question of which rook to develop is always a it's always an issue. In this case, this rook I'm keeping over down to king side in case he does try some type of attack here, which is with these advanced pawns would indicate that maybe he might try something aggressive. So okay, we're going to finish up here, but as you can see in this particular position, black has some nice development. Okay, this knight can at some point hop over here. This knight can either replace it, and it also covers these squares here. And at some point, I can perhaps capture here to open up the file for my rook. And if he ever does try to advance these pawns here, I've got some nice control with my bishop and my pawn. So in this particular position, it's about even. And in the opening, remember, unless your opponent makes a mistake, you can't really expect to get a huge advantage, but you want to make sure that you keep up with your opponent and make sure that you are following those principles to set you up for later in the game. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you found it helpful, please press the like button. If you are new to this channel, consider subscribing. Better Chess Training is all about helping you to become the hero of your chess story by helping improve your chess knowledge, as well as the way you think about chess and your performance at the chessboard. So if you wish, allow me to join you on your journey by hitting that subscribe button, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in a future video.